Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have W.M. Hovey Smith. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Until Death Do You Part, An American Family Meets Their Sicilian Cousins. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. But if you guys want to gather everything that Hovey has to offer, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site. Now, this site is going to be specifically for the narrative Until Death Do You Part. But guys, make sure you're checking into his Amazon page frequently because there are a lot of other books that Hovey has written. Now, for this one, the site that you're going to want to go to is fatherofthegrooms.net. There you'll find more information on Hovey, more information on this narrative, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's fatherofthegrooms.net. And I will say that Hovey was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, author Reputation Press Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, make sure you're doing yourself a favor and you're contacting ARP. You can find out more information on them at authorreputationpress.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hovey, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
Well, I'm very glad and honored to be here.
Wonderful. Well, listen, the honor is all ours, okay? And we're very much looking forward to this, and we're very glad to have you as a guest here with us on People of Distinction. Now, Hovey, I know we have so much information to cover, but before we go into the book, let's start off with a little more background information on yourself, please.
I'm from central rural Georgia, and I grew up in an outdoor environment. And I started writing, in high school even, and sold my first stuff in the 1970s to gun magazines. As an outdoorsman, I've done some 20 titles, most of which are outdoor related. But I reached a point in my life, I'm a little over 80 right now, that I just can't run with the dogs anymore. So consequently, I switched chairs a little bit. And turned to types of writing that weren't quite so strenuous. I've done several business books. My most recent is Make Your Own Job, Anytime, Anywhere, at Any Age, as I have done, and hence the evolution of a novel. I wanted to do something in later life that was exciting and interesting and, quite frankly, fun that I hadn't done before. So I went out and did it.
There you have it. There you have it. Well, Hovey, without further ado, Until Death Do You Part, An American Family Meets Their Sicilian Cousins. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Well, what the book is about is there is a Sicilian family from Louisiana. Now, nobody's ever heard about Sicilians in Louisiana. They've heard about them in Chicago and New York and Sicily, of course. But the Sicilians came to Louisiana after the Civil War as the world's cheapest source of labor. And so they worked the sugarcane. And the families have been there ever since. Well, in my fictional presentation, I imagine a family that after 3 generations decides, well, it's time to go and visit the home island and see where we all came from. Because great-grandpa left a long time ago. And the family's still been in correspondence. So they are invited and they go. And whence they arrive on the island on Monday, they are informed that their 2 sons, a Marine captain just home from Iraq, and a ne'er-do-well artist who got tossed out of his girlfriend's apartment in San Francisco because he never could make any money, are informed that they are going to be married on Friday to 2 women they've never even heard of, or none will leave the island alive. So that starts a series of events as they tour the island, are attacked by a rival mafia mob, see the sights, sample the food, and come up to the wedding day, and their gay hairdresser uncle and an Irish priest hatch a plot to maybe get them out of it. Well, briefly, the plot fails. And so, come the wedding day, they are there, and they're committed to be married to these gals, however long they might survive the experience.
Hovey, let's go into inspiration. Now, first and foremost, let's just start with this book before we go down the rabbit hole further. What inspired you to write this particular narrative?
Well, as an outdoor writer, I happened to stay with a family in Louisiana who were Sicilians and who happened to make a trip to Sicily and found out they had some unexpected relations that they didn't know anything about. On another time, I happened to be in a family in Mississippi who had two handsome sons that had marital difficulties. So consequently, I put these two families together, sort of, fictionally, and sent them all to Sicily, and from there developed the plot. And I actually went to Sicily, and I spent some time there, and did an island tour just like these fictional characters are doing. Saw the sights, tasted the food, had the wines, and so on and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. And after the tour, then came home and did an unexpected thing. I wrote a movie script. Then from the movie script and the criticism of the script, I actually completed my concept of the novel and finished and published the novel. So that's sort of how the situation arose that the novel came to print.
Now, following off of that, as you've stated, I mean, you've written upwards of 20 different titles. I mean, what an amazing accomplishment. Now, of course, given your background as an outdoorsman, the majority of the books in your canon revolve around that. But still, there are books that you've written. So was writing something that you always felt you wanted to do, or you always had a particular interest in? Where does that love for the creative arts come from?
I believe it's basically inherited genes, quite frankly. Many writers have been writing for almost since as long as I can remember, and that happened to me. And so even though I was a professional geologist, and still am for that matter, I'm still registered in Georgia. But the writing just came. It was something that I felt compelled to do and still do. And it's something I'll do until I die. Writers don't retire. We just expire.
I love it. I love it. Hovey, that is, a lot of the artists that we have here on the network tend to be authors. But that is the first time that I've heard that expression. Authors don't retire, they expire. I love it. I love it. Guys, here on the line with Hovey Smith, we're discussing his fantastic book, Until Death Do You Part. An American family meets their Sicilian cousins. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or directly through his site, fatherofthegrooms.net. You know, Hovey, next question that I'd love to go into. Of course, this is a fictional narrative. Now, it's a fictional narrative steeped and based in realistic circumstances and realistic occurrences. Maybe not the people going to Sicily to visit family and then being tied into a marriage. Maybe that's not a realistic circumstance. But the mafia is definitely something that is. I'm curious, Hovey, in addition to just using your imagination to create the circumstances for the storyline, was there any research that you did in preparation for this book?
Oh, yes, there certainly was. Whilst I was in Sicily, I had several opportunities to visit some mafia locations, some of the places they owned and own, and also to talk to some of the people. I was even once suspected of being a mafia member myself by two people I happened to be associated with. Well, at any rate, so the mafia arose as we know it today in the relatively recent past, meaning in the latter part of the 1800s. And it had to do with the lemon trade. They controlled the trade, and which was having to do with scurvy prevention on typically British ships. And then they grew from there. But the historic roots of the mafia go back as far as Sicily does. Sicily has been invaded by 17 different groups. There were the Phoenicians, there were the Greeks, there were the Normans, there were the Spanish, and so on and so on and so on. There were the French. And each tried to take and grab as much as they possibly could from the islands and their people. And so Sicily, even today, is considered sort of a second-class part of Italy. I describe them as getting cast-offs and second best, which is not far from the truth. And consequently, there is a natural resentment towards the national government of Italy in Sicily. And that sort of general resentment fosters associations like the mafia. And the danger is, okay, so you drive the mafia out, and some even worse organization comes in from the Far East or from South America. So it's dealing with the devil you know better than the one you don't.
Mm-hmm. And the next question, really a curiosity for myself, Hovey. What would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon this journey?
The most surprising thing to me was how much Sicily looks like the desert southwest of the U.S. They have the same cactus, believe it or not, because the Spanish imported them. They have the same fruits. The Spanish, when they occupied Sicily, were also in the New World. And so consequently, there was a cross-pollination between both cultures. Almonds came in from the Middle East, whereas citrus came in from the Americas to Sicily. And so many things that we think of now were probably first introduced to Sicily and even have Sicilian names, including the potato and tomato. If we got those words, I strongly suspect, from the Spanish importation of those products, first into Sicily, then into Spain, and then through the rest of Europe.
I would definitely be doing my listening audience a disservice if I didn't ask this next question. Now, you are someone that has written this novel as well as upwards of 19 other titles. So you're someone who has been through the process of not only writing your own narrative, but going through the gauntlet of getting the book published. And anybody that has been through the process understands that writing the book is only half the battle. So since we have you here on the line, Hovey, I'd love to take this opportunity. Being an artist myself, I love having this platform to pay it forward, in a sense, to other artists out there listening in. Now, in this instance, for any new writers listening in, Hovey, anybody that's just starting out, what words of wisdom would you be able to relay to them?
YouTube. I also have over 900 YouTube videos. And everything I do intertwines and relates to everything else. So consequently, I advertise my own works on my YouTube videos, regardless of the content. I might be hunting. I'm going to be going out squirrel hunting perhaps today before the storm comes in. And, that YouTube will carry ads about my books. Also, I was able to document on YouTube many of the places and sites that I described in my novel from Sicily. So not only can the viewer, or not only can the reader read my descriptions of the place, they can actually go to my YouTubes and see them. So that is the most valuable auxiliary tool that I can imagine for a writer writing on any subject, be it fiction or nonfiction. Build your audience, get on social media, make your blogs, and have your YouTubes. Yes, sir. You can be a YouTuber too.
Guys, there you have it. You know what I love so much about this? Listen, we've discussed so much information. We're at the end of the interview now, but yet we've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much left to be discovered, and that's why the onus is on you. Okay, there's no getting around it. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, fatherofthegrooms.net are the places you have to go. Until Death Do You Part is the title you have to pick up, and W.M. Hovey Smith is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. I don't know about you guys, but I know at least for me, I have been yearning for something that would take me away from the day-to-day monotony that has become this COVID living situation. And this book is the perfect exit strategy. Get lost in the journey. Embark upon it. Follow the characters that Hovey has set up. And get out of that monotony. Get out of that day-to-day COVID living situation. And just get lost. Hovey, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Well, very much enjoyed it. And thank you very much.